So we've got the start of a new month and new projects, and the theme for this month is autumn. So if you wanted to use that as a theme, it's really however you want to interpret it. So some people have got still lives, sort of autumn themed still lives. Two people put things in, which we can see, which is great. It could be like autumn trees and things like that. So that's my demo on Tuesday, the sort of autumn trees. I was also thinking, this is very much autumn. The geese have arrived this week, so that'd be a great theme. Just seeing them today. So whatever you associate with autumn. I've taken a couple of photos this week. I always think sort of things like misty mornings and sort of bright sunshine are very autumny. So that's one I took earlier in the week. And that was another one, just stuff on that Belton Way there. Is there any, so I could do some sort of demo. I thought I'd use oils, the water-mixable oils today. Maybe something like that, or should I do something else? Yeah. So this really appeals to me much more than some of the, this a Duke picture a lot of people went for in my Tuesday group, which is a kind of classic autumn scene, but I'd rather like that a bit more myself. Go with that. I might use that other one this afternoon. So really working landscape. I could sketch this out with some sort of pastel pencil or something, but I haven't really done that yet, so I'll just do it very quickly. It's fairly simple shapes, and what I'll do is just get some of it in this tree line here. So that's that line of trees, and then there's a slightly darker one, sort of here. This was, I took this last Saturday at Cherry Orchard, Cherry Orchard Way, Country Park, so it's quite nice, very nice. And then this, the figure, and that's kind of what appealed to me, was the figure. And I rather like that as a composition. I'm not sure, or maybe I want to move things over a little bit. Perhaps have the figure over here a little bit. And she had a dog, and I quite like to include the dog, which would be about there. So I'll probably use that photo. And what I tend to do is just like loads of photos. So if I'm out and about, I think I took about 20 different photos of different bits of the park. And this one was based on the same scene. So don't need too much, just a general impression of where I'm going to work really. And then with landscape, I tend to work background to foreground. I mean, this sky, just working out the colours there, to me it's a little bit warmer there, so maybe some yellows included in with the mix. And here it's a little bit, maybe slightly pinky grey or something like that. So I like to work, background, foreground. That's the sort of classic way to work with oils and landscape if I can. So I'll mix some sort of maybe slightly purpley grey for some of it, and then a warmer colour for the middle. So I've got a slightly crimsony red and a blue and a tiny bit of yellow. So I should be able to mix most of this just with primary colours, maybe a little bit of brown if it's still too bright. So ultramarine blue, crimson, and a tiny bit of yellow that's mixed in with the white actually. That looks a little bit too bright, so it's a bit dark, so just brighten that up a little bit. Let's try that. It's a bit in blue, tiny bit of brown. I quite like mixing with a knife to get a bigger quantity, but I find it harder to get the colour matches. So that's quite nice, and it's actually not too dissimilar from the board, to be honest. Perfectly matching the board. Yeah, let's make it a tiny bit darker. So just And I want to keep this bit here a little bit warmer, a sense that, the sun was peeking through that area. Let's move that over now. Widen that bit. And I'll use a bit of the same mix, but also add some yellow in with it now. So this is just a sort of medium yellow, like a cadmium style yellow. So that can go in there. Hopefully give an impression of that warm light. And if I overlap the trees a little bit, that'll probably be quite good. And then they can overlap that. That's a little bit thicker. Yeah, just to get a little bit of brightness there. I'm using a reasonable sized brush, bristle brush. And then these colours, they've really greyed down. I can see warm reddy colours and maybe slightly purpley greys there. So again, I'll stick with the same mix, but just darken it. So some ultramarine and some crimson. A little bit of yellow. I'm not sure how close that is, but we'll just try a little bit. That's what's greying down. I'll add a little bit of brown to it and a little bit more blue. So probably need a slightly smaller brush just to suggest a few leaves on the trees there. Basically just touching with a big brush like that, just touching it. And having a fairly well loaded brush helps. And this area where the sun's coming through, that might be quite nice to just make that a little bit lighter. So I'll add some of that sunny colour into it. A bit of warmth, a bit of yellow and a little bit of white. So I've got that down and I'll paint some of that into that. So really with oils, I very much work dark and then light into the dark. I think that can give quite a nice, pleasing effect. That area, just sort of in there. And it gives an impression of the light a little bit. I don't want to make it too light. See how much I can lighten it without it jumping out. I think that'd be enough. And then here, this bit is very much in shadow, and so I'll pick up another brush. Just save washing that one. Again, I'll go for the same grey mix and just add more dark to it. So I've added some brown, some blue, and I can't see any green in that. And there probably was, but what I'm seeing is shadow colours. So again, this is probably might be a little bit too dark. Those colours down and in. This board has lots of paintings on it. It's got quite a nice texture on it, so it's actually quite nice to work on. I quite like sometimes having some of the texture of the board showing through if I can. Just something like that. And this bit where the shadows are on the grass, grasses, so the figure will be there somewhere. Come up a little bit. So working wet into wet, I have to be careful I don't pick up too much of this. I don't mind a little bit of that just blurring in. Could let that dry and just if I wanted it more solid, but I don't mind that being a softer edge. I sort of blended in. And for me, this is very much a subject about light effects. And there is, I think there probably is light streaming through here, so actually bringing some of these pinks down into here a little bit, hopefully will give that impression of the light streaming through. Let's just try a little bit more of that. Just tiny bit dark at the bottom. Yeah, that'll be right. So this area here, I think I'll mix the two colours I've got mixed already. I think that will get me somewhere close to that. That's that sort of. And then I think this tree I would probably paint over the top, so I kind of need to get some of this in. These lighter pinky colours. A little bit yellow, a little bit red. So this one's a cadmium red and cadmium me yellow. Lots of white. Actually, it's a little bit pinker than it, so it's got a bit more red. Think like that. And then we have got some sort of waves of shadows going through. Pick up some of the dark. And again, I want to paint in some of the highlights, so I'll just wipe some of the dark off my brush. Got a bit of light paint on my knife there, so I can mix that in with it, add that into the mix. Get an impression of those. Just the light catching the tops of sort of waves of grasses in the distance. That'd be sort of here. So just really using the brush on its side here, so I just catch it a little bit. Could break that. It might be worth, if you've got anything like one of these ragged old fan brushes, you could kind of soften out the marks a little bit. Might work quite nicely. Like that. If you want to paint individual, like in the foreground here, we can see sort of individual grasses. So yeah, another brush. So I need something fairly dark. I won't do all this here, but I'll just do a little bit here. Some sort of dark shadowy colour. So that I've got a nice contrasting tone. I'll put those in first. And then you could use various ways of doing this. Just using like one of these filbert brushes, but this is bristle, so it's slightly rougher than some are going to be. So I might be able to just kind of press on hard and then flick upwards. Just kind of drag it like that. Sort of use it on its side. Get a kind of a rougher impression. So that's one way it would work. This might work. Try and pick up some paint and just actually paint it on with that. I'm a little bit, I don't like to overuse these sort of fan brushes. You see quite a lot of people just doing this sort of stipple mark, and it's not always that convincing, but they can be quite useful for just getting an impression. You could use palette knives. This would give quite, like the edge of a palette knife, gives quite a sharp mark and quite a straight mechanical mark. So that can be a little bit too mechanical. I did wonder, I found a card in my pocket and I wondered about like just a bit of like a business card. I could probably curve that. So that was in my pocket last night. So I thought, well, that might be worth trying. You can probably, yeah, you can bend that a little bit. So a bit like a credit card. Because it's cardboard, yeah, it's slightly mechanical, but because it's cardboard, it's easier to bend it and fold it. So I think with things like that, if you're going through individual textures, it is a matter of perhaps a few different techniques. The other one is just to use like a rigger brush, sort of very fine brush. So this would work. I usually thin the paint a bit when I use these though, because it needs a little bit of thinner paint to get that to flow. So yeah, that can be nice. But maybe a combination of a few. I think a combination of a few approaches is probably the best idea. Is that enough for now? Yeah. But it's one I might carry on with. As a thing. It's quite a nice thing.
And you put the figures on top ones?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, so I've kind of got the figure roughed in there. I could. Yeah, I've left a little gap for the figure there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could very quickly do a little bit of the figure. And they're in quite a lot of shadow. Actually, they're about there, aren't they? So maybe lose some of that. And actually, it doesn't need masses and it would bring that, maybe just lighten the legs a little bit. Sorry, this brush is a bit clumpy, but even just something like that is enough to get a suggestion. And then the really nice bit, which I always like to use, is yeah, that's all right. Just get a really tiny brush and get those little halos, a kind of halo of light, and just a few. And that's the bit that really kind of catches your eye. Maybe a tiny bit on the shoulders too, something like that, and it really draws your eye to that area. I was thinking I could do the same with the dog in here, perhaps do something like that. Once you've got the darks in, sometimes painting a little bit of slightly lighter colours into there, so it's not a sort of like black, cut out silhouette sort of thing. There's even in shadows there'll be bits of light reflected. And same with the tree here. I mean, that's what's nice about these is they're slightly backlit. You've got the shadows and the halos around the leaves. That's part of the appeal. And that really stands out against these bigger trees, which I rather like. I think that can be quite a nice theme for.
So just think about creating that mist.
Yeah.
So you're doing that as you paint rather than afterwards.
Yeah, sort of. Sometimes doing things like putting the darker paint in, and then let's find the right brush. Perhaps one of these. You could do like the. You can do it. That's too light, really. It's a bit darker. Almost sort of. Yeah, I think I would do it. You could possibly do it afterwards. That's another way. That's too much. Actually blending it with
yes, I was just thinking about the technique of getting that mist.
Yeah, I think probably there's different approaches. Yeah, if sort of as a quick demo now in one hit, that's how I do it. Another way would be to let all the darks dry and then paint something not white but something slightly lighter over the top.
Like an opaque.
Yeah, it's like a semi-opaque, what you call translucent or something like that. Yeah, that would be another way.
Okay.
Yeah, I think a bit of experimenting. And these inks, you could do the same here, perhaps lighten some of those, where there's like sun rays coming through, which there was here. Okay.
Think about.